What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Stochastic channel. And today we're talking College Football DFS ahead of Week 8, the Tuesday slate. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you by PrizePicks, and they have a first match deposit bonus for new users when you click the link in the video description below. They have all things player props, including college football, for those of you that know and love the sport. Not to mention, they're giving you 1 free month of Odd Shopper, which means you'll have access to all the tools, helping you from sides, totals, all the way down to player props, which are widely available on PrizePicks, not just college football, but NBA's coming up, NHL's back. We've got NFL in full swing. It's all there. So click the link, take advantage of that. All right, to bring you behind the glass to our data usage tool. 3-game slate. We kick things off with Liberty taking on Middle Tennessee. 55.5 total, 14-point spread in favor of Liberty. Liberty's slow, 117th in pace with a 34% pass rate. Middle Tennessee's the opposite, fast, but passing a ton. 37th in pace, 56% pass rate. Nick Vadiato is 7K on the slate. He's averaging 37 attempts per game with poor efficiency, just 259.5 yards. He does run a little bit, 151 on the ground there. So he gives you a pretty good floor ceiling combo if he does hit his passes. Liberty's played awesome defense, so this is far from a surefire matchup for Vadiato. But when you look at the context of this slate in terms of quarterbacks, I think he immediately jumps into the top 4. His counterpart, Caden Salter, is going to be the number 1 play. But Vadiato, he doesn't have any snap share concerns. He has good dual threat ability. This is going to be a good price-adjusted play overall, even as an underdog in a tough matchup. The backfield, we haven't seen news on Frank Peasant. Without him, they just continued their timeshare. Jaden Creedle, 13 carries. Terry Wilkins, 8. Timeshare in the pass game, relatively even. Creedle had 2 targets. They're just going to use a committee no matter what, it seems like. So this is a tough backfield to get to. Peasant was working slightly ahead of Creedle before the injury, so he's a slightly better price-adjusted play on FanDuel. He's much cheaper, so that's where I would look. Otherwise, Terry Wilkins at 4,100. Like, they've shown they're not giving Creedle the full workload no matter what. So that's at least worth mentioning. Pure punt play, Wilkins isn't terrible. Receiving game, Elijah Metcalf, Holden Willis, and Justin Olsen are your top 3 pass catchers. Metcalf and Holden Willis have come pretty close to each other in terms of yardage and routes recently. I still have a slight preference to Metcalf, just the more talented player. But, man, Willis has played pretty good, and the route share is reflecting it. Last week, Metcalf, 92%. Willis was at 81. That's the highest mark he's had in the last couple weeks. And it coincided with Justin Olsen down at 67%. That was about 10% lower than what we've seen the previous week for him. But the player that took the biggest step back here was DJ England Chisholm. This is after he had a couple egregious drops, including one that was a surefire touchdown. 39% of the routes. Zach Dobson, 50%. I'm no longer trusting DJ England Chisholm as a punt play. Dobson, I think you could look to at 3,500. He had 6 targets. DJ England Chisholm only had 2. And that's about it for Middle Tennessee. They've rotated less and less. Javonte Sherman, Jeremy Tate, Kalani Norris is not on the field much. Kellen Stewart's hurt. These guys aren't playable anymore. It is just the top 4, 5 guys if you include DJ England Chisholm. Liberty, mentioned this already. Caden Salter is the best quarterback play on the board. Just so active in the run game with 337 yards already. Averages 225 through the air. Best floor ceiling combo on the slate. Not particularly close. Play Salter. Backfield. In a semi-competitive game last week, semi-competitive, use that with quotes, Quentin Cooley outcarried Billy Lucas 28-9. He's now averaging 16.5 touches per game. He was injured for a little bit earlier this year, so I think we likely see him around 20 in competitive games. If he doesn't reach that, efficiency still likely helps him a ton. Then we had Billy Lucas, 9 carries. Aaron Bedgood, their receiver, running back hybrid at 5. I think both are viable in tournaments. Bedgood's especially interesting with his price at 4,100. He now has 12 carries combined over the last 2 games and 3 targets. So sort of like a Deebo Samuel player. He's really cheap at 4,100. I have a little more interest in Showdown, but he's at least live. Receivers. CJ Daniels, very clearly the wide receiver one here. We finally saw them consolidate routes a little bit. Daniels at 96% last game. Treyon Sibley, he was at 62%. Tight end Bentley Henshaw came in at 65, and then Noah Frith came back from injury to a 58% route share. Elijah Smoot, I don't know if he got injured or what happened, but he only played one snap, and he fully hit the bench. We even had Aaron Bedgood, that guy we just mentioned, the receiver running back hybrid, 38% of routes. Tight end 2, Austin Henderson, 27%. Kylan Austin, wide receiver, 5'6", whatever you want to call it, he was at 23% of routes. So Smoot no longer in play. Ranking these guys, Daniels is fine. I would go all the way down to Bentley Henshaw or Aaron Bedgood over playing a guy like Treyon Sibley. The volume's just not that different. And Noah Frith back from the injury. He plays a lot. He's just not targeted much. But for you very contrarian players, I would mention his name. Game 2, Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State, 61 total. Western Kentucky, 7-point favorites. They're 44th in pace with a 64% pass rate. Jacksonville State is first in pace with a 39.5% pass rate. Austin Reed's been pretty bad this year. He's not even averaging 300 yards on 41 attempts. He's averaging less than 7 yards per attempt, 61% completion. It's been tough sledding for Austin Reed, but this volume is still too much to ignore. Cash games, I'm just locking in Reed and Salter, not doing anything else. But for tournaments, you can certainly get away because he hasn't been good, and he's not 300-yard bonusing, and he doesn't run a lot. So 9K is too expensive for him just overall. But what I get to in cash games is just we don't have a lot of alternatives. On like a main slate, I wouldn't be playing a lot of Reed, but like who else are we really going to play? Am I playing Ashton Fry or Vadiato, who has a ceiling just as questionable? No, I'll take the volume with Reed in cash games. Beyond him, the running game is a four-way committee. Marquise Stepp leads over Elijah Young, who leads over Davion Irving Poindexter, who leads over LT Sanders. 3 games, you probably don't need to mess with these guys. Stepp would be the most likely to hit value, but pretty dicey. I would rather play some other guys. Quentin Cooley and even the Middle Tennessee backs are better than this. In the receiving game, Malachi Corley's too cheap, even at 7,800. Put him in your cash lineup. He's averaging 13.3 targets per game, 107.5 receiving yards. He's just very easily the top receiver for this team. And beyond that, it hasn't exactly been the most consistent, largely because of injuries. There's been a lot of players in and out of the lineup for Western Kentucky. It looks like Blue Smith is set to miss another game. He's been out for quite a bit. But we've had a little bit of a changing of the guard. Easton Messer, 25% of the routes. He's only been about 50% twice this year. He's just a rotational receiver at this point. Craig Burt is between 40 and 50%. Dalvin Smith saw his routes cut down to 36%, previously at 52 the week prior. All this coincided with Musa Berry and Jimmy Holiday getting massive spikes in routes. Berry was up from 56% to 75. Jimmy Holiday from 54% to 86. These guys were previously like 50% players before, but now you have Musa Berry at 3,200 and Jimmy Holiday at 4K. I mean, I think you're playing at least one of them to just jam the studs. It's how you get Corley. It's how you get the 2 quarterbacks. I also think you should be playing Salter and Reed in cash games because you have extremely cheap options that just allow for it. No reason not to. On the Jacksonville State side, Smothers has an ankle injury. Zion Webb has a concussion. Redshirt freshman Ashton Fry looks like he's going to play in this game. I mean, they recruit a specific type of quarterback. The offense isn't going to change. Like, they use the quarterback as a runner. Fry's not going to throw the ball a lot. I mean, we had Smothers and Zion Webb averaging fewer than 20 attempts per game. People worried about this. I don't know why. They're not changing the offense, but we need to make sure that Smothers and Webb are out. If so, Fry would be very interesting to me at the Stone Mint because he has an immense rushing floor. It's just the offense that they utilize at Jacksonville State. Running back, we just lost Malik Jackson in addition to Ron Wiggins. Fortunately, Anwar Lewis is back from injury. This guy led the team in rushing last year, over 900 rushing yards. They brought him along slowly, but here's his carries. 4, 8, 15. This guy's going to handle a monster workload. They just flat out do not have anybody else. Expect 20 to 25 carries for Anwar Lewis with whatever he gets in the pass game. He's the single best running back play on the board today. Beyond that, receiving game is just as volatile as ever with Western Kentucky. With Jacksonville State. They don't throw the ball a lot. And when they do, they rotate routes and they don't do it consistently. Perry Carter is the safest. His route share has been above 70% in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Sean Brown, I would rank second, their tight end, above 75% in 2 of the last 3 weeks. The problem is he was at 40% the other time. Then you have Quinton Lane, 80%, 55%, 68%. Michael Pettaway, 80%, 55%, 41%. Just going over the last 3 games for all these guys. Sterling Galbon, 69%, 36%, 38%. Jamari Joyner, 42%, 50%. Didn't play the week prior, at least didn't receive a target. So as you can see, it's not consistent. No one's really ever eclipsing 80%. And just in terms of most likely to play a full allotment of snaps, it would be 1 Carter, 2 Brown, 3 Lane. Pretty dicey beyond that. So not going to play a lot of Jacksonville State pass catchers, random one-offs in larger sets of lineups. Last game, Southern Miss, South Alabama, 52.5 total South Alabama. They're beyond 17-point favorites right now. They're taking tons of money. Both teams about the same pace. Southern Miss 73rd, South Alabama 72nd. Pass rate's almost identical. They're almost right at 50% apiece. South Alabama slightly run heavier. On Southern Miss, Billy Wiles is horrible. 34 attempts per game, 209 yards. He takes plenty of sacks. Only 14 rush yards. He's just as likely to finish with negative yards as positive yards. I don't think you can play Billy Wiles. I would rank him dead last among quarterbacks on today's slate, and that is with the Jacksonville State merry-go-round at quarterback we've seen recently. What this team will do is slam Frank Gore into the back of the line 25 to 30 times a game for a horrific 66 yards. Volume's really good for Frank Gore. He should probably just be in cash lineups. I think you're playing 4 of 3 backs, Frank Gore, LaDamian Webb, Anwar Lewis, and maybe Quentin Cooley on this slate. Those are the 4 guys you should be considering for cash. Rodriguez Clark is just a change of pace, even though he's more efficient by a ton than Frank Gore. This coaching staff is inept. Receiving game, Jacarius Caston's pretty cheap. He does have 8 targets per game over the last 4, 55.5 receiving yards. Latrell Jones is another punt play. He's been over 8 targets in 3 of the last 4 games, and he's 3,300. To Kylan Mims as your wide receiver 3, he's 4K, 4.7 targets per game. A little more efficient than Latrell Jones, but just not as involved. Then you have rotational guys like Tyquan Henderson. The only other player to mention is Cole Cavallo, who's only played in 2 games this year, but his route rate jumped to 80%. 3,500, he's another guy you can mix and match as a cheap option. For South Alabama, heavy favorites here. Carter Bradley's a pure pocket passer, and he doesn't have a lot of volume. So I still rank him behind Austin Reed and Caden Salter, but he's right there with like Vadiato. 3-4, I think these are your GPP range you want to get to. Bradley and Vadiato specifically. LaDamian Webb might flat out be the best running back play on the slate. Just not as much volume as Frank Gore, but way more efficiency. Involved in the pass game, he has 10 targets combined over the last 2 games. The guy's averaging nearly 16 touches per game, 79 yards on the ground. You'll occasionally see Kentrell Bullock and Marco Lee. So it's not the full workload LaDamian Webb had last year, but still really good, and efficiency should be solid. Southern Miss is allowing 5.2 yards per carry, which is one of the worst marks in the entire country to opposing rushers. And then at receiver, we saw them lose Devin Voisin earlier this year, which has Colin Lacey's really stepped up, man. 120 receiving yards per game, 9 targets per game. The guy hasn't seen fewer than 9 targets in each of the last 3 games, every route. I'm just jamming him and Malachi Corley, figuring out the rest. And again, there's plenty of punts. It's very easy to do this. Jamal Pritchett and Javon Ivory round out your 2 and 3 wide receiver sets. Ivory's been very uninvolved. Only 57 yards this year is pretty bad. But occasionally one of these ancillary pieces will pop up for a big game, so I don't want to just ignore them. Ivory, maybe he's a little less likely than Jamal Pritchett. Ivory's route rate's been all over the board. Last 3 games, 65%, 86, and 46. That 46 corresponded with kind of a blowout, so I'm not really that concerned. Tight end is a nasty rotation. It's Lincoln Sefcik, DJ Thomas, Brandon Crum, Todd Justice. They use 4 tight ends, so this will be a situation to avoid. But that'll do it for us today. Let me know in the comment section. Oh, I forgot to do the ad read again. If you guys want this stuff, these data tables, the projections, the ownership projections, it's available in the link in the video description below. I always forget to do this. Gotta promote my own work, so I'm sorry. Bosses keep telling me to do it. Link in the video description below if you'd like to support. Thank you if you've done so. It means a lot, and I appreciate it. Otherwise, if you have a comment, let me know below. Reach out on Twitter. If you have a question, I'm at Matt_Gajewski. My DMs are open. Love talking about this stuff. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll do the ad read before the end, and it'll be good. Until then, good luck, everyone. We'll see you guys next time.